So hey guys, welcome back. This is Anmol Shukla and a very warm welcome to my YouTube channel History with me. ये अगेन एक मच अवेटेड वीडियो है जिसका आप लोग बहुत ज़्यादा इंतज़ार कर रहे थे और आप लोगों के बहुत सारे मैसेजेस थे, डीएम्स थे जो आ रहे थे कि क्वांटिटेटिव टेक्निक्स फॉर बिजनेस चाहिए. सो हियर वी आर गोना एक्सप्लेन हियर ऑल द टॉपिक्स. स्पेसिफिकली वी आर गोइंग टू कवर द थियोरेटिकल क्वेश्चंस हियर. तो जितने भी थ्योरी वाले क्वेश्चंस हैं विल कवर. थ्योरी में आपको कहीं भी दिक्कत नहीं होगी. एंड इफ पॉसिबल आई हैव ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू कि न्यूमेरिकल्स में क्या क्या क्वेश्चंस आपको करके जाने हैं. सो दैट आइडिया आई हैव ऑलरेडी गेव यू. कुछ क्वेश्चंस मैंने आपको बताए थे, वही आपको करके जाने हैं न्यूमेरिकल्स में. एंड यू जस्ट हैव टू प्रिपेयर प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन पेपर फॉर न्यूमेरिकल्स. If possible, I'll bring a separate video for numerical as well. But for now, let's just focus on the theoretical aspect, which will basically cover, this whole subject for you, quantitative techniques for business. So before that, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get the daily updates and notification. The very first thing that we are going to understand here, the notes are, prepared in such a way कि आपको सब कुछ समझ में आ जाने वाला है just by reading it. And I'm here to explain the topics as well. So you'll be good to go for your exam after this particular lecture. So the very first thing that we're going to understand here, and which is, a very basic of your quantitative technique for business is, what is primary and secondary data. You should be aware कि primary data क्या होता है, secondary data क्या होता है. सिंपल अगर मैं बोलूँ, प्राइमरी डेटा वो डेटा होता है दैट यू आर गोना कलेक्ट डायरेक्टली. You're not gonna rely on different sources. Like right now, you use different articles from websites. इंटरनेट में आप जाके ढूंढते हो, ऑलरेडी रिपोर्ट्स जो मिल जाती हैं, ऑलरेडी जो आर्टिकल्स होते हैं, चैट जीपीटी करते हो आप, ब्राउज करके ही आप डेटा कलेक्ट करते हो. तो दैट्स योर सेकेंडरी डेटा, डेटा विच इज ऑलरेडी देयर, and collected by someone else, and you are using it for research. But primary data, it's a primary data, so that's, you're collecting it for the very first time. And this is collected by, that's what I'm trying to mean कि researcher के द्वारा directly collect किया जाता है for the first time. And this is done for a specific purpose. Like for example, a company who's doing a survey to know customer satisfaction with a very new product. So they'll not rely on data which is already collected. They'll have to find out the fresh data using different sources. So that's what primary data is, the data that you're collecting for the very first time for a specific purpose. And secondary data, on the other hand, data that is already there and collected by someone else, and it is used by the researcher. So like for example, using the already present government reports or a newspaper article for your research product. Let me give you an example again. Let's for example, you are a BBA student or an MBA student, or whoever you are, जो भी student आप हो. So let's suppose you are conducting a questionnaire survey basically among 50 college students, and you're finding basically their spending habits, कि किस तरीके से वो spend करते हैं these students. So now what you're doing here is you're doing primary research, or I would say this is primary data. Why primary data? Because the student is collecting a very fresh data directly from people, directly from these 50 people or 50 college students. But the same BBA student, if maybe that student uses data from maybe Reserve Bank of India report about average monthly expenses of youth in India, so that becomes a very generalized thing. And again, that's a secondary data, because here you are relying on the data which is already collected and published by someone else. So I think with this we can move to the next slide. I think enough of primary and secondary data आपको clear हो गया होगा. Let's try to understand what is the meaning of classification now. Classification का मतलब होता है, नाम से ही clear है, classify करना. And why we classify data? We do it in order to basically find some common trends and characteristics, in order to arrange data which is raw, basically organize data which is raw, so that we can it becomes really easy for us to understand the data and find trends in it, to analyze it. So that's why we classify it. It means basically arranging your data into different groups or categories based on some common characteristics. So it helps you organize the raw data so that it becomes easy to understand and analyze. Now let's see what the definition of classification is. सो क्लासिफिकेशन की डेफिनेशन जो होती है बेसिकली इट इज द प्रोसेस ऑफ अरेंजिंग डेटा into different classes or groups. So what we do is we arrange data and we do it into different classes or groups basis of similarities and differences. Like for example, if you collect data about 100 people's occupation, and then in occupation maybe you group them as doctors, teachers, engineers. So that's what classification is. Classification of data based on profession, and similarly you do it on the basis of different classes of groups, or on the basis of similarities and differences. So that is what classification is. Now let's try to understand what is correlation. Correlation क्या होता है? Correlation means the relationship between two variables. How one variable changes when the other changes. एक variable, let's suppose we have two variables, x and y. And when we change y, what is a change in x? That is what correlation is. It is the relationship between two variables. Let's suppose two variables here are speed and time. So, what is the change in speed when we increase the time, or what is the change in speed when we decrease the time? So, in order to understand the relationship between two variables, which can be anything, or how one variable changes when the other changes, that's what we basically find out when we talk about correlation. It shows whether and how strongly two variables or two things are related. So that's what correlation is. And in statistics, it's a tool that measures the degree of relationship between two variables and how strong these variables are, with each other, or how weak they are basically, or how change in one affects the other. So let's talk about some key points about correlation. So it doesn't prove cause and effect. तो cause and effect वाली चीजें ये prove नहीं करता. It only shows that a relationship exists. It talks about the relationship between the two variables. It doesn't prove the cause and effect. And the value of correlation, that is usually measured using the correlation coefficient, that is a small r. So correlation की value को हम measure करते हैं using this constant, which is correlation coefficient. और इसकी जो range होती है, it is from -1 to +1. If it is +1, it means it is a perfect positive correlation. If it is 0, it means there is no correlation. And if it is -1, it means perfect negative correlation. Let's move and let's quickly talk about, क्योंकि आपको नहीं समझ में आया होगा ऐसे, कि what are the types of correlation. The very first is positive correlation. Now, whenever both variables moves in the same direction, that is, they are basically proportional, I would say. Like for example, more advertising, तो जितनी ज्यादा एडवर्टाइजिंग उतनी ही ज्यादा क्या होगी, सेल्स. सो इनके बीच की जो रिलेशनशिप है, दैट्स गोना बी योर पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन, बिकॉज बोथ वेरिएबल्स मूव इन द सेम डायरेक्शन. Similarly, when both variables moves in opposite direction, like for example, jitna zyada price, utni kam demand, then that's going to be a negative correlation, where the variable moves in opposite direction. एक बढ़ रहा है तो दूसरा घट रहा है. So that is a relationship in negative correlation. What happened in zero or no correlation? There is no connection, not at all. Any connection. There is no connection at all between the variables. Like for example, your shoe size and your exam score. Is there any connection? Absolutely not. Perfect correlation means a perfectly consistent relationship between two variables. Like for example, अगर variable a जो है वो बढ़ रहा है with a certain amount, variable b भी उसी proportion में क्या होगा, change होगा, which is a very ideal condition. So that's a perfect correlation. Linear correlation, it means the relationship between these two variables, it can be shown by a straight line on a graph. So if we can show it in a straight line on a graph in a constant manner, then that's going to be a linear correlation. Like for example, salary and years of experiences, which usually increase in a fixed pattern. So that's going to be your linear correlation. Okay, great. I think this is again same slide. So I think those slides जो हैं यहाँ पर repeat हुई हैं. I'm sorry for that. Let's move आगे and let's quickly talk about uh, Carl Pearson's coefficient of correlation. क्या होता है? Let's try to understand. So सबसे पहले कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन. दिस इज अ मैथमेटिकल फॉर्मूला which is used to measure the strength and direction. अभी जो लीनियर रिलेशनशिप की हम बात कर रहे थे बिटवीन टू वेरिएबल्स, अभी अभी हमने बात की लीनियर रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन टू वेरिएबल्स की. लेट मी क्विकली शो यू अगेन लास्ट पॉइंट. अगर आप देखोगे यहाँ पर, तो यहाँ पर हम बात कर रहे हैं लीनियर रिलेशनशिप की, जिसमें मैंने आपको एग्जाम्पल भी दिया कि सैलरी एंड ईयर्स ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस यूजुअली increase in a fixed pattern. So the relationship between two variables which can be shown by a straight line on a graph. ग्राफ में अगर आप दो वेरिएबल्स के बीच की रिलेशनशिप को स्ट्रेट लाइन में शो कर रहे हो, यानी कि वो कांस्टेंट है, एक में चेंज दूसरे के चेंज के साथ भी कांस्टेंट है कहीं ना कहीं, और फिक्स्ड पैटर्न में कहीं ना कहीं वो चेंज हो रहा है, देन दैट्स गोना बी योर लीनियर कोरिलेशन. और कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन जो है, ये वही मैथमेटिकल फॉर्मूला है जो कि मेजर करने के लिए बनाया गया है द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ और यू नो बेसिकली द डायरेक्शन ऑफ दिस लीनियर रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन टू वेरिएबल. And it is one of the most commonly used methods to find out, कि how closely two variables are related. It tells us, whether two variables move together oppositely or have there is or isn't any connection at all. सो हियर्स हाउ इट वर्क्स. ठीक है, तो सबसे पहले तो ये आपको ध्यान रखना है कि कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन जो है, ये एक मैथमेटिकल फॉर्मूला है जिसका इस्तेमाल हम करते हैं टू मेजर द स्ट्रेंथ एंड डायरेक्शन किसकी, लीनियर रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन टू वेरिएबल्स की. तो यहां पर होता क्या है कि इफ योर स्मॉल आर इज पॉजिटिव वंस, then it is going to be a perfect positive relation. अगर r क्या है, स्मॉल r, इट्स प्लस वन. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जितने ज्यादा घंटे पढ़ाई के उतने ज्यादा मार्क्स, इट्स गोना बी अ परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव रिलेशन. If your r is negative 1 minus 1, it means this is a perfect negative relation. More absences, lower marks. Or if R is zero, it means there is no relation at all. The shoe size and exam marks, as मैंने दिया. So we use this Carl Pearson's method when we want to measure the strength of a linear relationship. Especially, when the relationship seems to follow. That's why we are saying linear relationships. So especially we use it when the relationship seems to follow a straight line path. That is more practice, better performance, something like that. That's what your linear relationship is. And there we use Carl Pearson's coefficient of correlation formula to measure the strength of that variables. So that's what the formula is. It's what I'm talking about. So if you look at the formula, in order to calculate this small r, this is a formula: summation x minus mean of x, y minus mean of y, divided by square root of summation x minus mean of x ka whole square, summation y minus mean of y ka whole square. So these the mean of x, mean of y, and x and y basically are the two variables. So that's a formula for Carl coefficient, Carl Pearson's coefficient of correlation. काफी लंबा नाम. Let's talk about, आपने देखो डेटा को हम टेब्यूलेट क्यों करते हैं. What is the importance of tabulation of this statistical data? Let's try to understand the first of all the meaning of tabulation. Tabulation का simple मतलब क्या है? टेबल में कन्वर्ट करना, रोज और कॉलम्स में कन्वर्ट करना. सो जब भी मैं वीडियो बनाता हूँ इस टाइम ही पड़ोसी जो है वो अपने घर का ताला लगा रहे होते हैं, और वो जो शोर है वो ज़रूर आता है वीडियो में, मैंने नोटिस किया है. आई एम रियली सॉरी फॉर दैट. ओके, डन. सो वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट टेब्यूलेशन. तो टेब्यूलेशन का मतलब है कि हम डेटा को टेबल्स के फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट कर रहे हैं, रोज और कॉलम्स के फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट कर रहे हैं. व्हाई वी डू इट, व्हाई वी क्लासिफाई द डेटा इन रोज एंड कॉलम्स, टू मेक इट easy, so that we can read it, we can analyze it, we can understand it. So tabulation is nothing but it is a method of presenting data in a table form, ताकि patterns दिख सकें, comparisons कर सकें, और relationships जो है वो variables के बीच में आसानी से दिख सकें. So let's quickly talk about classification of tabulation. There's one is simple tabulation, one is double tabulation, और एक होता है complex tabulation. Simple tabulation जो है, it shows data related to only one characteristic. Like for example, number of students in different courses. So this shows data related to only one characteristic. But when we talk about two characteristics at the same time, there's a number of male and female students in different courses, and we represent it in a tabular form, then that's going to be your double tabulation. Again, if it involves more than two characteristics, then it becomes complex tabulation. Like for example, number of male and female students from different states studying in different courses. So ये एक complex tabulation हो जाती है. तो I hope this is clear to you, classification of tabulation. Now, importance क्या है tabulation? As I already said, it presents data in a very clear and structured way. It helps you make quick comparisons, क्योंकि tabular form में डायग्रामेटिकली जब आप चीज़ों को रिप्रेजेंट करते हो डेटा को, तो आप आसानी से उनमें होने वाले ट्रेंड्स को समझ सकते हो, आप उसको एनालाइज कर सकते हो, आप कंपेयर कर सकते हो डेटा को. It also makes data easy to understand for everyone. Again, it is useful for further statistical analysis. It helps in averages निकाल सकते हो, बहुत सारी चीजें आप कर सकते हो. It helps in saving time also while interpreting results, and it makes it easier to spot trends, patterns, or relationships in the data. Now, after Carl's Pearson's coefficient of correlation, now let's talk about what is Spearman's rank correlation method, and we'll quickly, compare the two methods as well. Then, so first of all, let's quickly talk about what is Spearman's rank correlation. So Spearman's rank correlation, it's a method which is used to measure the relationship between two variables when the data is in the form of ranks. तो ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट होता है. यहाँ पर भी हम रिलेशनशिप को ही कहीं ना कहीं मेजर कर रहे हैं बिटवीन द टू वेरिएबल्स, बट हियर द डेटा इज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ रैंक्स. रैंक के फॉर्म में होगा, एक्चुअल वैल्यूज के फॉर्म में नहीं होगा, अनलाइक जो भी हो रहा था हमारे कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोएफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन में. सो इट इज स्पेशली यूजफुल व्हेन द डेटा इज नॉट न्यूमेरिकल, and or when we just want to compare the positions or preferences, the ranks basically. वहां पर इसीलिए नाम भी है Spearman's rank correlation, क्योंकि here the data is it in the form of ranks, not on actual values. So now the question arises, कब हम इसका इस्तेमाल करते हैं? हम तभी इस्तेमाल करेंगे जब डेटा रैंकिंग के ऑर्डर में दिया होगा, या रैंकिंग में दिया होगा, या ऑर्डर में दिया होगा, लाइक फर्स्ट, सेकंड, थर्ड. वहां पर हम इसका इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं इन ऑर्डर टू measure the relationship between two variables. दूसरा, when we want to check if two rankings are related or not, then we can use it. Or it is also useful in non-qualitative, quantitative studies, like it can be used in taste, preferences, performances, etc. जहां पर भी order या ranking की बात होगी. So this is a formula. Let's quickly, talk about the formula again. You can see here Spearman's rank correlation का ये formula है. Small r यहाँ पर, जो कि Spearman's rank correlation coefficient है, 1 minus 6 sigma d square upon n square minus 1 bracket में. n number of pairs होते हैं, d is nothing but difference between the ranks of each pair, and r again is a Spearman's rank correlation coefficient. So if your r is +1, again it's going to be perfect positive rank correlation, same order होगा इस केस में. अगर -1 है तो exact opposite order होगा, and that's going to be your perfect negative rank correlation. और 0 है तो no correlation in the rankings, कोई भी relation correlation नहीं है. Now let's quickly talk about how the Spearman's rank correlation differs from Carl Pearson's coefficient for correlation. जो भी पूछा जा सकता है एग्जाम में. तो सबसे पहला तो आप खुद जानते हो, कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोएफिशिएंट फॉर कोरिलेशन में जो डेटा होता है वो एक्चुअल डेटा नंबर्स का डेटा होता है. So the very first thing worth considering is the type of data used. So कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोरिलेशन में हम एक्चुअल न्यूमेरिकल वैल्यूज का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, बल्कि जबकि स्पेयरमैन्स रैंक कोरिलेशन में हम रैंक का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, ऑर्डर्ड डेटा का इस्तेमाल करते हैं. वेरी फर्स्ट पॉइंट ऑफ डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू. इसके अलावा स्पेयरमैन्स रैंक कोरिलेशन और कार्ल पियर्सन्स कोरिलेशन को हम कंपेयर करें, सो स्पेयरमैन्स जो है इट मेजर्स मोनोटोनिक रिलेशनशिप्स, ऑर्डर बेस्ड जो होती हैं, जबकि कार्ल पियर्सन्स इट मेजर्स लीनियर रिलेशनशिप, वी ऑल नो, बेस्ड ऑन मीन्स एंड डेविएशंस, इन्वॉल्व भी है उसके फॉर्मूला में. देन कोई स्ट्रिक्ट assumptions नहीं है स्पेयरमैन्स रैंक कोरिलेशन में, जबकि कार्ल पियर्सन्स में we have it assumes data is normally distributed and it is continuous. Again, Spearman's rank correlation में it works with non-parametric data and it is used when you have ranking or qualitative comparisons. But Carl Pearson's correlation here, it is used, it's first of all it is distributed and it assumes कि data जो होगा वो कहीं ना कहीं नॉर्मली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड होगा और कॉन्टिन्यूस होगा, और इसका इस्तेमाल हम कब करेंगे, व्हेन यू हैव क्वांटिटेटिव डेटा, न्यूमेरिकल वैल्यूज बेसिकली. सो दैट्स हाउ these two differ basically. Now let's quickly talk about what is trend. ट्रेंड क्या होता है? ट्रेंड जो है कुछ भी नहीं है, जनरल डायरेक्शन है इन विच समथिंग इज मे बी मूविंग और चेंजिंग ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. तो स्टैटिस्टिक्स में या बिजनेस में ट्रेंड जो है ये दिखाता है कि वेदर अ पर्टिकुलर डेटा इज इंक्रीजिंग, वेदर इट इज डिक्रीजिंग, वेदर इट इज कांस्टेंट, as time goes on. Like for example, if company sales are increasing every month, so that's going to be your upward trend. If the number of customer is falling slowly, then that's going to be your downward trend. So if the data stays the same, then that's going to be your constant trend. Now, why the trend is important? Because it helps you understanding the future performance as well. You can forecast the future performance because of the trend, because of the because of this general direction. आपको मदद मिल रही है ना in understanding this, कि how something is moving or changing over a period of time. So that is really really important in business and statistics, because it shows you कि डेटा जो है किस तरीके से बढ़ घट रहा है या कांस्टेंट हो रहा है as the time goes by. It definitely helps you in forecasting future performance. It is useful for business planning and decisions, and it shows long term movement in data beyond short terms ups and downs. Now, let's quickly talk about what is fitting a straight line to a time series means. So, what do you mean by fitting a straight line to a time series? सबसे पहले तो हम ये समझते हैं. It means drawing a line that shows the overall direction in your data over time, like whether sales, profits, or population are increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. पर्पस यही होता है इसका, टू प्रिडिक्ट फ्यूचर वैल्यूज यूजिंग द पास्ट डेटा. सबसे पहले आप समझ पाए या नहीं समझ पाए, मेरे को फिर से बताने दो आपको. फिटिंग अ स्ट्रेट लाइन टू अ टाइम सीरीज का मतलब ये होता है, इसका बेसिकली यही मतलब है कि हम एक लाइन ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं, and the line that we are going to draw, that line will show the overall direction या trend in your data, within a particular time, like whether sales, profits, or population, whether it is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. So it's a line that shows the overall direction in your data over time, and this helps you predicting the future values using your past data. There are some methods for it. So the very first is graphic method, जिसको हम freehand method भी कहते हैं. So what you do here is you just plot the data points on a graph, like year versus sales. As you have x axis, y axis, and you just plot the data points on a graph, and then you draw a straight line, by hand, that follows the direction of these points. So it's not that accurate, but it is easy. So that is a graphic method of fitting a straight line into a time series in order to understand the overall direction or trend in your data over time, in order to predict the future values using the past data. Then we have a semi average method, where what you do is basically you divide your data into two equal part, first half and then second half, and you find the average of each half. Average kaho ya mean kaho, and then you plot these two averages and you join them using this straight line. So ये भी आपको trend line जो है कहीं ना कहीं दे देता है. Then there's this third method also, which is quite popular, and it's a mathematical method, which is least square method. It is, I would say, it finds the best fit straight line using a formula. We have a formula: y is equal to a plus bx. Y जो है, it is whatever the value which is to be predicted. X जो है, it is going to be time. It can be first year, it can be second year, third year, something like that. And A and B are basically calculated from the data, and it will give you the most accurate trend line and helps you forecast future values. So that's a concept of trend and the various methods of fitting a straight line to time series. Now let's quickly talk about the concept of regression. Subsequently, you can see the formula for regression as well. That's a simple regression equation. Y is equal to a plus bx, where y is your dependent variable, the one that you want to predict. X is your independent variable, the one you know. A is intercept, the value of y when x is equal to 0, and B is slope. It shows how much y changes when x increases, let's say by 1. So regression जो है कुछ भी नहीं है, it's a statistical tool which is used to study the relationship between two or more variables. लेकिन यहाँ पर condition ये है कि one variable is dependent. Here again we are trying to find the relationship between two or more variables. but the condition is that one variable here is dependent and the other is independent. एक dependent है और एक को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, एक independent है. Simple words में अगर हम कहें, regression helps us predict the value of one variable based on the other. So let's suppose you want to predict a student's exam marks, which is y, your dependent variable, which depends upon number of hours that particular student is studying. So that again is your x, because y is dependent variable, which is here predicting a student's exam marks, and x is independent variable, the one you know. So marks, yani ki y is your dependent variable, hours studied, x, that's going to be your independent variable. And using regression, you're going to find a formula, or basically a line, that helps us say that if a student studies, let's suppose 5 hours, then he might score 75 marks. Based on the past data, you're going to show it. And that's what the concept of regression is. It's a tool which helps you study the relationship between two or more variables, where one, that is going to be your dependent and the other one is independent. You have to find which one is dependent, which one is independent. You have to apply the formula. You have to find the value of a and b, and you can easily apply it in regression. You can easily find a straight line. We can find a formula, a line that helps us say or compare the two variables or the relationship between. So that's not the end. I think there are two questions still left. So I want you to prepare for these questions. ध्यान से सुनो. The very first that I'm going to give you in homework is concept of, just write it down, concept of standard deviation with example can be asked in exam for sure. So concept of standard deviation with example पहला. दूसरा, what do you understand by graphical presentation, which is a very 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 theoretical question. You can do it for sure. बहुत easy है. What do you understand by graphical presentation, and describe its advantages, disadvantages and its various forms. So ये दो क्वेश्चन आपको होमवर्क में करने पूछे जा सकते हैं एग्जाम में. Concept of standard deviation with example, और दूसरा, what do you understand by graphical presentation, advantages, disadvantages and its various forms. So that's it for this particular video. I hope चीजें आपको clear है और clarity मिली होगी, confidence आया होगा for this particular subject. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, keep studying. All the very best for exam. Take care.